recording? Great. Give a minute here for everyone to get connected. And we'll get started. We have a lot of ground to cover this evening, so I want to thank you all for joining us and taking this on with me. I'm Jamie Stein, Town Planner. Welcome to everybody. We also have joining us the Chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, Mr. Scott Edmund.
Hello.
Thanks, Scott, for joining. I also see Commissioner Ted Sands, as well as Commissioner Larry Rizzolo. Thank you for joining. I see our first selectman, Matt Hoey. Thank you for joining, Matt. Great. So let's dive in, shall we? In order to get through what is about, I also see the chair of the Economic Development Commission. Sorry, Wendy, I have to give you a shout out there. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Great. Without further ado, I'd like to really dive in. We've got quite a bit to cover this evening. I'm not even going to pretend to cover every single detail that is included in our business districts. My real goal tonight is to be able to provide everyone with materials, that are now all uploaded to our website and begin kind of a discussion about the business districts at a broad level. So let me just share my screen here, I've created just a brief presentation here to kind of guide us through. Scott, if I make you a co-host, are you able to let people in? Can you do that? Because I see when I...
Sure.
Oh, no. Yeah, that would be great, because I think when I go into presenter mode, I can't see the two folks that are in the...
I got it.
Great, thank you, much appreciated. Okay, so here we are. Can you all see my screen here?
Yeah.
This evening's discussion is about the business districts and the draft zoning regulations that we have put together. Now, these are in and around Route 1 and also predominantly along Route 1. Here to the left, we've just, I'm sort of labeling off the different districts that we have. So tonight, I would actually like to try to get through at a very high level these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or so districts. So, just to give you a little bit of context here, if you haven't already seen this before, this is our sort of draft schedule to adoption for the zoning regulations. We have been working on these regulations for, I think close to 2 years now. And we're in the home stretch, although, we are taking a little bit longer to finalize them, but we're intentionally setting up a series of these information sessions and workshops for the public to engage with the Planning and Zoning Department, as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission, to have discussions about elements of the zoning regulations that pertain to them and that are important. We had a very, I feel, productive conversation about accessory farmland uses back in July. And tonight we are discussing the business districts and zones along Route 1. Why did I freeze? Hold on, sorry. Having a little technical difficulty here, to be expected. Let's try that again. Okay, we're back. Here we go. Maybe I need to keep it out of presenter mode. Okay, great. So I just wanted to give kind of a brief, very high level overview here. Predominantly, the overarching goal of this comprehensive rewrite of our zoning regulations is really to reorganize, to simplify, to try to make the document itself, the zoning regulations document itself, more user-friendly, more easy to navigate. If you've noticed, the draft regulations now have a table of contents, which we didn't have before. So a lot of organizational efforts have gone into this, and particularly around the business districts, a lot of hard work was done to take over 20 different districts and try to merge and consolidate them down to 11 districts. So that's probably the biggest thing that you'll see this evening. There are some revisions to the limitations of building size. We have removed some of the areas in which we had age-restricted housing development. And interestingly, always in the past, the business or mixed use or commercial zones, many of them did have allocation for residential development. We've tried to kind of make that consistent across the board and streamline that part of the regulations a little bit. There are some interesting commonalities in all districts. So these are grouped together for a reason. And there's a few commonalities that you'll see. I've just listed them here. We have something new that allows a change of use within an existing building just via a staff level zoning permit. So that's not going before the Planning and Zoning Commission, something to give some thought to. Keeping with our interest in supporting farms and farming, we do have the allocation for the creation or development of farm-related buildings, again, via a staff level zoning permit. With the COVID era and the governor's executive orders, kind of fast-tracking outdoor dining and the outdoor display of merchandise, we've moved in the zoning regulations to make outdoor dining accessory to a permitted use via, again, a staff level zoning permit. And you'll also see commonly throughout our business districts, accessory solar and wind systems are allowed via special permit. So as we move through these, a couple of very important things just to keep in mind, and let's see if I can't get this in presenter mode. Oh, geez. If you can see, as part of the materials that were placed on the website, there's two very important maps that if you're gonna endeavor to understand what we're doing here, you're gonna kind of cycle in between them. So there's the existing zoning map that kind of, what we did here is that we took out the color coding for the residential zones, because this is just focused on the commercial, the industrial, and the business zones. So you'll see all the different colors. This is the existing map. So this is the map that shows about 20 different districts. And here is the proposed map. So this evening, as we're walking through, I'll do my best to kind of cycle between these two maps. But if you do have a computer screen up or you've got some printouts in front of you, I think this will be very helpful just to kind of see, you know, where I'm talking about and where is the actual location of these zones. So again, I know that as a commissioner, when I first saw this, we toggled between these two maps quite a bit, just trying to understand, like, okay, where are we? What are we talking about? So hopefully to make this process a very easy one, to try to show the differences between the proposed new zones and the existing zones, what I have done, and again, you'll find this spreadsheet in the materials folder on the website, is we have, I've done my best to create what I'm referring to as a comparative use table here. So this is just a screenshot. I'll actually be walking everyone through the use tables. I hope to take the majority of our time together to do that. I think it's the best way to understand what we're proposing. So for example, I'm just showing here the proposed business mixed use district that we have. This proposed new district is actually a mix, a merge, a joining of our mixed-use conservation zones 1, 2, and 3. So again, I don't mean to kind of belabor this here, but if we take these 3 zones, what you're going to see in these tables is on the left-hand side under column A are all of the uses. So if you're familiar with looking at use tables for zones, you'll know that this is kind of a snapshot that we do to be able to show what uses are permitted in each zone and how they're permitted. So in this particular column, and what you'll see in all of the use tables that we've put together, the uses are listed in column A. Columns, continuing to the right, will have the existing zones and how things are permitted. So for example, what we're looking at here, buildings, uses, and facilities of the town, state, and federal government are permitted in all of these existing mixed-use conservation zones. And this P stands for a site plan. So a site plan is an application before the Planning and Zoning Commission. So what we're trying to do is show this new zone in the furthest left or furthest right column and what the difference is. So for example, in this particular one, in our new proposed mixed-use district, we've actually kind of isolated out urgent medical care facilities. We allow them via site plan, whereas skilled nursing facilities, hospitals are via special permit. And so if you look closely here, there is a difference in the old mixed-use conservation zones. All of these facilities were permitted via site plan. Okay, so that's kind of the rhythm here. I've called out where I could any notes that I found for each zone. And then I've also created this little section here for suggestions. So as we go through the use table, this is how I will just kind of take your feedback and your suggestion. So I will, yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Jamie, this is Scott Edmund, Chair of Planning and Zoning. Thank you very much for putting this together. I think this is really great and very helpful to see all the differences and see how close some of these districts are together. One thing I just wanted to note was if it's blank, that means that it's not permitted. It's a use that's not permitted in that
correct
district, correct?
Correct. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, for those that, just to reiterate what Scott said, so where you see these blank sections, that means that is not in these particular mixed use conservation zones, retail, dry cleaning, and laundering establishments are not currently permitted, and they would not be permitted in the future zone. Thanks, Scott. Okay, I'll stop sharing before we launch into the use tables. Any questions, any points of clarification? Anybody have a burning question that they, don't want to sit through the whole presentation and they just want to ask it now? I'll entertain those. If anyone has any questions before we launch into the use tables. You could raise your hand or unmute yourself, or I think those are about the only 2 options.
Jamie, Attorney Resnikoff, I just couldn't tell from your proposed change of zones, what zone the property that I'm involved with will be changed to.
Yep, sure. Thank you, Henry. So let's take a gander at that, just to help people kind of orient themselves. What I'll do is I'll pull up these zoning maps again. Let me try to zoom in here. Let's see if I can do that. This is the existing zoning map. So Henry, I usually don't have much trouble finding your site because it's directly across from the shopping center zone. So Mr. Resnikoff, I believe, holds the land lease for the small building right at the stop sign or stoplight, sorry, forgive me, in front of Shoreline Plaza. So your existing zone, Mr. Resnikoff, is what we refer to as the Post Road Village or PV zone. Okay, and then in the proposed zoning map, this will become, it is proposed to become this one in red now, which is the Post Road Business District 1, I think is the name of it now. And so as we continue to move through, if anyone has questions like Mr. Resnick's, if you'd like me to kind of stop and walk through where any particular site is, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. If there are no further questions, let's get started. I will share the use tables here. Just kind of walk you through how these are set up, and hopefully by about the second or third zone, we'll all be pros. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the current use table for all of our non-residential zones. So this is something we affectionately refer to as Table 5. What you'll see here are all of those 20-odd zones listed in the columns. And again, you'll see this kind of series of Ps and SPs for special permit and other notations for all of the uses on the left. So this is our existing full Table 5. What I've done here, and again, these are available through the materials folder on the website. Feel free to take them, download them, have a look at them, spend time with them if you'd like. And so each tab represents one of the new proposed zones. So for example, if we go to the new proposed Guilford Green Business District, okay? So again, I'm going to try not to do too much flipping, between those maps, to save everybody a headache. But if you do have a moment to consult the existing zoning map, you'll see something referred to as commercial zone or C1. That is an area just kind of southwest of the green. That is an area that is within, or yes, within our historic district. So I know that there are some representatives of the Historic District Commission on the phone this evening, so eager to hear your thoughts on this as well. So again, the regulations themselves, if you've had a chance to look at the draft regulations, they go into much more detail here. What I'm trying just to show are these kind of high-level uses. So again, there's this one new change which was added to all the business districts, and I think it's worth at least pointing out to everyone, and if anyone wants to have a discussion about its potential use moving forward. I did get, and I hope I continue to receive, I'll reiterate that, please do reach out to me via email or telephone or my office, however you want to communicate, and let me know, if you find something in here that pertains to your property or to your interests that you'd like to discuss. I did receive a phone call from a property owner who has a mixed-use property along Route 1. He has residential on a second floor and commercial on the first floor. He is located within walking distance of the green, which we refer to as our downtown. And this particular idea was of interest to him, and it's something that he has seen in other towns where he owns property, where there's an interest in adaptive reuse of existing structures to increase density. So there are some specifics in each zone about this kind of change of use within an existing building, which can be done at, again, sort of the staff level zoning permit review, not going before the Planning and Zoning Commission. Perhaps this is an opportunity. So I wanted to put it out there for everyone to consider. Again, so going through our existing C1 zone, which is now being proposed to be called, and we're not changing lines, we're not changing zone boundaries or lines here, we're sticking to all the existing zone boundaries. We're changing the names, and we're changing some of the uses and some of the details in each zone. Okay, so again here, I think you can all see this. I don't want to belabor. One thing that we have done in the new proposed Guilford Green Business District, we have excluded skilled nursing facilities and hospitals from that zone. whereas they used to be permitted via site plan in the old commercial zone. Dwelling units, again, I found this one to be interesting. We've placed a density of 6 units per acre, and dwelling units are allowed within this zone via special permit, but only at 6 units per acre. So perhaps worth a discussion here about maintaining the 8 units per acre. There was a shift in the new regs to kind of cap out at this density of 6 units per acre. Okay. Farming is allowed in any zone in Guilford, no permit required. Farm-related buildings now are allowed in all business districts and can be approved via staff level permit. Nothing's changed with financial institutions. Lodging and conference centers are the same. Entertainment facilities are the same. And again, these are all sort of, you see where there's a notation for the existing zone and the new zone. Offices, businesses, personal service establishments, places of worship, all the same. No changes here. Recreational facilities. This one is a little bit different. I believe that in this new zone, we have excluded physical fitness facilities. And this particular use here of recreational facilities other than of the town, including gymnasiums and physical fitness establishments and studios for dance, musical, and theatrical instruction. The new regulations include only studios for dance, musical, and theatrical instruction. Again, I had referenced this idea of outdoor dining has now shifted into really a staff level zoning permit. And I'm happy to go into more detail on that, but basically with the executive orders from the government during the COVID-19 pandemic, we kind of did a local fast tracking of approvals for outdoor dining to allow our restaurants to continue to thrive in warm weather. And a lot of work was done into working with those businesses and permitting them through the planning and zoning department. I really see no reason to go back and have those folks start all over. So that is a change that we have kept. Outdoor music, however, does still require a special permit. Again, I had referenced that this sort of wind and energy facilities as a permitted use, but now we handle them a bit differently. These new regs allow accessory solar and wind energy systems with a few specifications that you can find in section 8 of the new regs via special permit. The retail stores, we just have plain retail stores. We're excluding garden supply stores, greenhouses, the sale and storage of lumber and building materials. And there was this sort of universal shift, I think, in most of the business districts that daycare facilities will still be permitted via site plan. However, private schools, colleges, and universities will require a special permit. Artist studios, the same. Museums, the same special permit. So that's the rhythm. That's the way that we're going to go through this. Can I just get a check here to see how many of you are sleeping? Are you still engaged? Does this make sense? Is this a worthwhile endeavor? Does anyone have particular questions? Go ahead, Scott.
Sure, Scott Edmond. I think one question I just had from going through that is it looked like a number of your items we're proposing to slightly change the types of uses. So, like for instance, not allowing gymnasiums and physical activity. Can you explain quickly where those came from? Were they suggestions from power users, from residents? Were they things from other towns that other towns are doing? Could you explain that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I mean, unfortunately, I'm gonna pull the card here of I inherited these ones. I don't. Right. I mean, the only adjustment that I have made since my time in the seat is around that outdoor dining right. as an accessory use, because a lot of work by the former zoning enforcement officer went into permitting those establishments. I have a sense that former staff working with Glenn Chalder, our consultant on these zone changes, might have arrived at some of those tweaks.
I would agree that that's probably where it came from. And so suggest to everyone that's listening that if you had a question about one of those specific proposed changes, certainly connect with Jamie, and she'll connect with Glenn and find the history about why that change is being proposed. If you have a question about a specific one. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Jamie?
Yep, Ted.
With respect to solar, you say that it's permitted with a special permit. If somebody decides to put solar on the roof of an existing building, does that require a special permit?
No, we actually do that via a building permit now that just has a zoning departmental review of a building permit. I think these were intended to be larger installations, and also I think to accommodate wind energy. I would like to have a more in-depth discussion on the details that we have as part of our sustainability information session. In that information session, which I think is in October, we'll be discussing the standards for wind energy, solar energy, the provisions for electric vehicle charging stations, exterior lighting, and a couple of different efforts that we're making in that realm. So maybe we can touch on the details of solar and wind energy in that session.
Okay, but I mean, I don't want people to think that we're against solar.
No,
And that
we're
if
not.
you wanna,
Yes, thank
if
you.
you want to do solar, you don't go to Guilford. I mean, I think that's the way the reg reads right now. You get a little bit of a vibe that way. And I think that we should be more specific. If what we're saying is that if you want to put a solar array on the ground in one of these districts, you need a permit. But if you're going to put solar up on your building, you don't need to go through the whole process.
Jamie, if you wouldn't mind, the town of Guilford has signed on to an organization, a national organization called SolSmart. And we are in the process, if not having completed the process, to make the permitting process for solar on residential properties significantly easier than it has been in the past. So we are actively promoting the use of solar technologies in residential areas. I can't speak to the commercial side, but I do know for a fact that Guilford is now is considered a SolSmart community, which is part of a national organization, Ted.
Right, but and I think that's excellent. But what I'm saying, Jamie, is that if somebody decides that they want to put a solar panels on an existing roof in a commercial building, I think we should encourage that.
Yeah. No, I hear you, Ted, loud and clear. Oh,
sorry. Is that why it says accessory? Because that would be a separate from the building?
mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think this is definitely worth, giving some thoughtful consideration to. I hear you, Ted, about, let's be clear. What are we talking about? Are we talking about, as the person who just spoke up said, this is accessory to a structure, which I believe is what this was intended to be. But you're also raising a great point. I mean, is a special permit too restrictive? If we want to be talking about fast tracking, is a special permit perhaps too arduous of a permit? So I'm open to that discussion and have left it here. And I think we can continue this in our sustainability conversation. Great. Thank you for that, Ted. Anyone else like to chime in before we launch into the new commercial district? Marjorie, welcome. Hi.
Hi. I would like to suggest that a special permit is not an arduous process and shouldn't be construed to be one, and that it is directed at use that is permitted, but reviewed individually to make sure that it is conforming to the streetscape and not a nuisance to the adjoining neighbors. And in other towns where there are solar arrays, it's an important process to make sure that there is landscaping or whatever needs to happen to soften the interface between the solar array and adjoining uses. So I think that the distinction needs to be made between the garden variety homeowner, business owner who wants to put some solar panels up and the solar array to distinguish them. But I don't think that there's anything onerous about exposing the array to a special permit process for district consistency. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you for that wisdom. Okay. We will now move on. Thank you very much. Let's see. We can now go to the new commercial district. Okay, so this one gets a little bit more complicated. If you do have your zoning map in front of you for existing zones, commercial zones, we have the C2, the C4W, the C4, and a smattering of what we refer to as CD parcels. So what we've done here is now we have merged all of these 4 zones into this proposed commercial district. So these zones, I mean, we have them very far west on Route 1, and we have them in and around the green. There are a few CD parcels around the green. We have a C4W zone across from what locals refer to as the rock pile, where we have Guilford Commons and Panera Bread. And we have it actually a little bit further north of 95. So these zones are kind of smattered all over town. So again, there is this change of use within an existing building. That's something that remained consistent throughout all of these zones. I don't think we ever did any real changes to these sort of town, state, and federal government buildings. They maintained consistent in all the new zones as via site plan. Retail, dry cleaning, and laundering establishments. These are now, 2 of the zones they weren't permitted, and now they're permitted in this zone via site plan. Laundromats are a special permit. Clinics, medical and dental are site plan. Skilled nursing facilities, hospitals, urgent medical care. I'll try not to do too much reading here, forgive me. Dwelling units, again, so here there's actually a bump in the density. Getting back to one of Scott's earlier comments about working with Mr. Chalder, the great consultant who has been really helping us with all this work. Glenn has been a little bit in the background for these sessions, but I do plan to ask him to come and join again in the near future. He will be there for the final public information meeting, but Glenn has a lot of the kind of context and the understanding for why certain decisions were made. So for me, these types of decisions about why in this particular zone we happen to go a little bit higher in density is something that I would like a little bit more clarity on. Okay. It seems as though motor vehicle repair was allowed in 3 of these 4 zones via special permit. The new regs exclude motor vehicle repair from the commercial district. Okay, same thing now with the retail sales of new and used motor vehicles. Those are now excluded in these commercial districts. Lodging and conference centers was split between special permit and site plan. It has converted to site plan. Manufacturing is allowed via special permit. There are no marina or marine-based activities. Again, the motor vehicle refueling stations are not permitted in these zones. Motor vehicle washing establishments, not permitted. I didn't fill. What else here? Heating fuel and bulk storage that is allowed via special permit. Research laboratories via site plan. Now this is an area, Scott, where we did not remove the large fitness establishments. We've kept them joined with studios for dance, music, and theatrical instruction, and that is via site plan. Restaurants excluding drive-throughs. I know there's some interest in drive-through facilities on the call tonight, so I'll make sure to point those out in which zones we allow them in, or we are proposing to allow them in. Again, outdoor dining. Again, this allocation of accessory solar and wind energy systems. So we'll make a similar note to revisit that. Retail sales and storage of lumber, not permitted. Again, these daycares have been pulled out in this one as via site plan, whereas all other schools, colleges, and universities are special permit. Warehousing, warehouses excluding trucking terminals that are not permitted. Artist studios permitted. So, you know, this was an interesting point for me. We're removing at least one area where we did allow for building contractors and landscape contractors facilities, including yards with vehicle and material storage. This is something that Commissioner Sands and I have chatted about. We do in the office in Town Hall South, we get a lot of small contractors, small business owners who register their homes or register their businesses to their homes and may keep, one commercial vehicle at their home. And the regs do have some guidance as to a little bit more clarity on what is permitted and what is not. But more often than not, we do see these types of contractor or commercial vehicles that are stored in residential properties. So I just question here, do we have a sufficient allowance for these types of facilities? So I'm just raising it here as a point.
Well, I would raise it too, because I think that my understanding is that here in town that there's a shortage of that type of facility.
Right. I don't know if anyone from the Shoreline Chamber of Commerce is on the phone, but we did get some feedback regarding the merger of our I-1 and I-2 zones and some of the tweaks in those use tables from the chamber. This is perhaps another one that, maybe we could work with some small business stakeholders and see what this, if this is really something that we need to have more of. Okay, thank you. Great. This is also another one, trade shops, metalworking, machine shops, painting shops. This came up, actually it was the Shoreline Chamber of Commerce that commented how they would like to see this set of uses reestablished in the industrial zone, because as we get to the next district, you'll see that it was removed. Okay. Any questions on the commercial district? I think I did send a note. Oh,
Looks like we have a hand raised.
Yep. Lena, welcome.
Thank you. So I see we have some dwelling units, daycare, medical facilities, and dry cleaning. I'm just concerned that the dwelling units and daycare may be exposed to hazardous wastes, medical waste, toxic waste from some of the permitted use facilities here. And I'm not sure if it's either in the town's best interest or in the public's best interest to mix dwelling with some of this commercial stuff.
Thank you, Lena. I'll make a note of that.
Thank you.
I comment that I suspect that most of the medical facilities are probably pretty diligent about the disposal of their medical waste. But, you know, if there's some accounts otherwise, we should take that into account. Sorry,
Right, thanks, Bill.
just got back from dropping off my son at college, so.
Oh,
Sorry,
nice.
I'm
Good
late.
to see you. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. This is one area that I would like to have a more robust conversation with, again, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at where we actually are proposing these. Right. Okay, yeah. All right, scratch that, what I was going to say. Okay, moving on. Any further questions on the industrial district? Okay, Lena, I'm gonna lower your hand there. Okay, great. Thank you. Let's move on here. Great. So again, okay, so now we have reached our industrial districts. These actually, you know, when you look at the existing and the proposed map, we actually do have quite a bit of industrial space around town. So this is something that we should give some careful thought and consideration to our industrial businesses. And in a very brief conversation with Ms. Sherry Cody, our Economic Development Officer, she and I had talked about how industrial space and zones are coveted. They're hard to come by, that we should keep and maintain them for their uses. So I think you'll see that this use table has, you know, a diversity of uses in both the existing and the proposed industrial district, but by and large maintains mostly industrial uses. Okay. So dwelling units. There was dwelling units were allowed via special permit in or are allowed in the I1 and I2 zones, which are being merged into this industrial district. They are no longer permitted.
Could you pull up just the map? Sorry, I'm playing catch up
Sure.
here as to
Yep.
where exactly we're talking about.
Yep.
I'm
Nope.
sorry.
No, not a problem at all, Phil. We were, I didn't want to give too many people a whiplash here with going back and forth, but so here are all the purple.
I'm seeing everybody. I'm not seeing any screen share on the purple.
Oh, okay. Let me try that again. And how about now?
Okay, great.
Purple, okay. Oh, went too far, sorry. There we go.
Right.
Okay,
The purple is the proposed combining 1 and 2.
correct. And if we want to shoot to the existing, here you are. The I2 is kind of the pinky color and the I1 is the blue color.
And then the proposed, is this the proposed or the current?
This is the existing.
Okay.
Now I'll shift to the proposed.
I'm a little. There's a parcel.
It's just combining the two.
Okay,
What do you, I'm sorry?
I'm just curious. It looks like 66 High Street's industrial.
It sure does, yep.
Okay.
Well, it used to be.
Yeah.
It sure was.
I think I have made an outreach to the executive director for New England Geosystems, who is the group that manages our sort of GIS interactive mapping, and also did this mapping work with the former planning and zoning staff. And I think once we do get closer to adoption of the regs, we need to kind of revisit this and make sure all of our zoning map is up to date, because this will become the map that we reference. Any other questions about the existing or proposed maps? And anybody want to see a little bit closer, or?
Has there been any discussion about trying to eliminate split zones?
I think I just more broadly spoke about how I think the overarching goal of this has always been to kind of simplify and merge where we could, to try to move beyond the 20 plus different zones and districts down to about 11, I think we have now. But the areas where we have, are you talking about parcels where we actually have the frontage is one zone and the back is the other?
Yeah, well, specifically, probably more that the front would be commercial and the back is residential.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be an area where we've had some problematic issues, or people, wanting to make the whole thing commercial, and then abutting neighbors saying, hey, I bought next to a residential parcel, not a commercial parcel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, Phil, I think the decision, again, part of that is before Jamie's time, but I think that the decision was to just try to solidify and try to make things a bit more user-friendly for now, and then tackle items like that a little more specifically later on.
No worries.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I think, Phil, you're also raising a point that I know I've talked to the, all the planning and zoning commissioners about, but really, I would like very much to prioritize doing a comprehensive plan for Route 1 from, the whole stretch of it through Guilford. I don't think it's something that we've done as a town. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. These zoning regulations, this rewrite is really meant to, as Scott said, try to simplify. I mean, there are some tweaks to the uses, but we're trying to keep those to a minimum, rather than, rewrite, all of our sort of our comprehensive plan through these zoning regulation changes. So, it's not the end for Route 1. And so we're going to keep visiting these zones. Okay, thank you. We'll move on now to where was I? Okay, so the proposed industrial district. We have made a few tweaks to, I had just discussed briefly that dwelling units are no longer permitted. We have made just a few little tweaks to the standards for motor vehicle repair and the retail sales of motor vehicles. Those can be found in sections 6.4 and 6.5. They're basically things that are site plan or staying site plan, really no, other than the dwelling units, no elimination of uses. This one's just a little bit off here. This heating fuel and bulk storage of heating fuels, that is still via special permit. Recreational facilities and gyms, again, special permit. We do have the same allocations for dining. So I did get this comment also from the Shoreline Chamber of Commerce, that the sort of the allocation of drive-throughs, maybe not as we conventionally have listed them as being accessory to restaurants, but just the ability for people who are patronizing perhaps a business in an industrial district to kind of have some form of drive-through service. You know, I did get a comment that this would help with efficiencies. So anyone have an industrial property? If you could comment on that, it's something that I will look into a little bit further, but it was a comment that, you know, we respectfully received from the Shoreline Chamber of Commerce. So I would like to continue to look into that. Okay. Again, there is a shift here for schools, colleges, universities, and daycares to be via special permit. I think, again, this Lena's comment earlier is also relevant here. You know, the siting of a daycare facility in an industrial zone should be carefully considered. Lena, would you like to comment on that? Okay.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so, yeah, I would agree with what you just said. I think that dwelling should always be, you know, considered for the health matters related to where it's going. And also, I should have mentioned this earlier, but I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand and stuff. About putting more dwelling units on the green, surrounding the green area.
Mhm.
You know, there's so much traffic going around that green and so much congestion. When we put more dwelling units, we might be inviting toddlers running out into the street, or kids with bicycles that live there, and skateboards that live there. And you know, I just think that should be considered too, because it's could be difficult.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Lena. I mean, I think that the aspiration there is that we're increasing the opportunity for a walkable sort of livelihood where one could live and work and walk and play and shop, you know, without the use of a car. But that also comes with some other considerations as you're raising. So thank you for expressing that concern.
Yeah, I would say in the time that I've lived on the green, there aren't really families. It's single adults or young couples. I've never noticed a child going in and out of one of the apartments on the green as a resident.
Great. Thank you, Morgan. Good to see you virtually. Great. Okay, Dr. Basically, I did want to get here too as well. This is something that I'm actually going to ask Glenn Chalder, our consultant, if this is an oversight. It seems to me that an industrial district is a perfect space for trade shops, metalworking, machine shops, painting shops, woodworking, and millwork shops. You see, I've made a notation here. It was allowed via site plan, is no longer permitted. And that is too bolstered by the comments that we received from the Shoreline Chamber of Commerce, a suggestion to keep this use in this space. Okay. Any questions on the industrial district? Okay, great, thank you. We'll move on now to the marine commercial. Shall I revisit the map? Is that helpful? Does that kind of place everyone before we launch into uses?
Please do.
Please do. Please do.
Yep, yep, my pleasure. Just have to toggle between the two. Okay. All right, so here is the proposed map. And what we're looking at now is the MC, Marine Commercial. So it's down here. Let me see if I can just scroll up just a smidge without changing. Let me go way down there. Okay. So it's this small zone here. Maybe if I zoom in, that would be helpful. Okay, then I just got to bring us to the location. All right, so this kind of turquoise color here, this is what we're focusing on now. And again, this is the proposed zoning map. There's also a little smidge of it over here too. Looking at my larger computer here to see. Yes, that captures all of it. Okay, I'll now, if there aren't any questions, I'll move to the use table. Okay.
Jamie,
Yep,
quick question on marine commercial. Can
Yep.
you provide the building height limitations in the marine commercial?
yes, let's have a look at the actual regs here. Okay, I don't think you're with me. You're not with me. Okay, let me.
Sorry, Al.
There we go. Okay, so I've gotten us into the regs, but we're in the Guilford Green Business District. So let me get us to the marine commercial. Forgive me, this will just take a moment. Okay, the Marine Commercial District is a new district. Again, it's a merger of the past or existing C2M and MR1. Let's see where we can go. So the way that the regs themselves are set up, they all kind of follow this structure here. So the purpose, the principal uses and structures, what doesn't require a permit, what can be done with a staff level permit, what's done with site plan, what's done with special permit. Then we go through accessory uses and structures. Here's one allocation that I believe is new. A clubhouse, including sale of food and beverages, swimming pool, and other recreation facilities when accessory to a marina is.
That's fine. I don't think anyone's worried about the Guilford Yacht Club.
Okay. I see lot shape, frontage, setback. I don't see height, Phil.
Principal, I guess that would be
It's
principal
right there at the
building.
bottom.
Oh, it is. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you. Principal building, 40 feet. Accessory building, 25.
Is that a change?
Let me go to, where would I find that? Our existing regs.
Somehow I had in my mind, and I only say this because I live relatively close
Right.
to one of those districts, that it could have gone up to 5 or 6 stories as a constructed building. But I might be wrong. I'm happy to admit I'm wrong.
I don't think so, Phil. Nothing is jumping out to me as a major height increase there. You know, in my head, I always have 37 feet in my head as the maximum building height, but I think I'm happy to make a note of that and look a little bit closer into
Sure.
that.
You just check on like what the current regulations are on that versus what the current, I mean, frankly, if we're reducing it, I think that we might get some pushback from the current property owners, but
Phil, thank you for that question. Are there any non-conforming buildings in the new contemplated zone for that? And I'm particularly thinking of the folks that are the Rothberg Institute, which I think based on the square footage might already exceed the allowable usage there. So my concern is, are there non-conforming entities in that zone right now who are using that same definition?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I know that Glenn and the former staff paid close attention to, and you'll see it in some of the use tables. You can see that they're clearly accommodating for an existing use to not render it non-conforming. But I think you're asking actually two questions there, right? Like, are we going to render anything that's existing non-conforming, and do we have anything currently that's non-conforming?
Well said.
Okay, thank you. Oops, just got a spell. Great. Okay. Again, there's this inclusion of change of use within an existing building. This density has been increased. Dwelling units via special permit rather than site plan, but the units per acre are at 6, not 4 and not 1, which was the 2 other existing zones. The farms and farm buildings, financial institutions were permitted in this zone in the past, but are no longer permitted. All of the marine-based stuff is the same. And yes, so this accessory as a clubhouse with an accessory use that I referenced earlier in the actual zoning regs is now a administrative level or staff level zoning permit rather than a special permit.
Jamie, so is the regulation currently stating that it has to be a marine-based facility, like research or?
This one, yes. So marine research laboratories and marine related education facilities.
I'd be a proponent of getting rid of that from the standpoint that it's impossible to regulate.
Okay.
I mean,
Right.
I think the Rothberg Institute does terrific work. I think Butterfly Labs does terrific work, but it's not marine based. And we went through a process of approving their acquisition of the stone house and conversion of that to laboratories, but it doesn't have anything to do with, to the best of my knowledge, it doesn't anything to do with marine-based research.
Okay.
I mean, they developed some wonderful technology, but it has nothing to do with marine-based research.
Yeah.
So that being said, like, you know, I'm fully in support of their work. I just I don't want to handcuff. I mean, and Matt, you chip in here. I mean, it just seems like if these are our regulations, then we should stand by them. And if this is not what we want, and if we want them to develop a research-based area, I think that's terrific.
Phil, I feel like I'm going to go back over and revision the history over a couple of years, and there was a contention about the conversion of that property based solely on the fact that they were going to be doing marine research, which was the way the property was originally defined for usage, as opposed to being a restaurant or whatever it is. So I completely agree with you. A better clarification around that title of marine research probably is warranted before we extend the same privilege to anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, even if you just eliminated the word marine, just be like a research-based institute or
Right.
something to that effect.
So research laboratories are a common permitted use in most of our business districts. How we permit it changes through each district, but it is, you know, in the existing use table, that would be a very easy thing to add. We could add that, you know, just add it as a use.
I mean, I would rather have people be more conforming than not conforming and trying to skirt the regulation, especially when it's like fairly innocuous and and they've been terrific neighbors. So
Okay.
I'm not gonna complain about that.
Thank you. Okay, great. Places of worship are no longer permitted in the proposed marine commercial district. Dining again. Yeah, it's just keep it down over there. Again, the accessory solar, museums, I think that covers it. Any marine commercial questions that we can answer? Any clarification needed? Okay, let me stop sharing here. Let's do a time check, 8:30. I still have many of you with me. Excellent. Let's see if we can get through some things here. Okay, the business mixed use. And we had briefly touched on this one earlier. Let me pull up the zoning map. This is now, we are merging. Where is my zoning map? Where have you gone? Here we are. Okay. Sorry, lots of clicking. Okay, so what we are looking at now are these, again, I have brought you here to the proposed zoning map. So the business mixed use district, you'll see here in the kind of orangish color. Let me zoom out a bit so we get the full look here. So you can orient yourselves. Okay, I think that, oh, sorry, so finicky. Okay, so it's worth now revisiting the existing zoning map. So where I have you now is you're seeing the existing zoning map. The new proposed business mixed use district will be a merger of the MUC1, the MUC2, and the MUC3. Yes, it is those three. It's the MUC2, the MUC1, and the MUC3. Okay, so I'll take you now to the proposed zoning map, and you'll see those zones in the orange color. Okay, so hopefully that orients everyone. Any questions?
Are there any changes in use allowed between this change?
Yep, let's have a look. Let's go to the use table. Marjorie, would you like to ask a question while I'm getting us there?
Thank you. I would like to ask a question. Given the edge of the BMU zone with on the border with Branford and a little bit with North Branford, is there consistency or compatibility across the town borders for use?
It's a great question, Marjorie. I have not explored that. I see Matt shaking his head.
Ready? The answer is no.
The answer is no. You're right. They're mixed in terms of the usage, at least at my last recollection.
I mean, I don't think we've ever, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't had an application. I was at a meeting where there was a proposed development on Guilford property that was going to, use the Branford sewer system. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure whatever came of that. But I think I don't recall any collaboration or, accounting between the two zoning codes.
I'm not really talking about collaboration because each town has its own sovereign authority over its borders. On the other hand, from a sustainability perspective and a coherence perspective, checking in on what the next town over is doing, and that I'm speaking to both towns when I say that, in
Mhm.
order to avoid duplication of services and to encourage a lovely streetscape, perhaps just something to check in on.
Yeah. Thank you,
Mar-
Marjorie. Yep. Sorry.
Marjorie, your point's well taken. I think that there's at least one parcel on Route 1 West that straddles both the North Branford and Guilford, that probably has 3 different zoning regulations that need to be negotiated between the 3 parties, if any, or 3 of the towns, if anybody want to develop that entire parcel.
I would be working on that parcel right now.
I thought you might be.
I think like everyone involved would love to see that develop properly too.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think maybe from a procedural perspective, I mean, we are required to notify the COG, the regional COG, with these types of changes. And it might just be a good idea to put it out there to Harry, who I believe is the planner, Harry Smith, the planner for Branford, just to give a little bit more than 30 days, let them know what we're up to. I'm happy to do that. Okay, great. So looking at the uses, Phil, getting back to your question. So again, if you're looking at the existing zoning map, MUC1, MUC2, MUC3 has now become BMU, or the Business Mixed Use District. The sort of urgent medical care via site plan, skilled nursing facilities, hospitals via special permit, that is a slight change. The dwelling units, the new regs remove 55 or older, which was in the old MUC1 or the existing MUC1 and MUC2. And interestingly, those zones did not have density restrictions. They did have the age restriction, but not a density restriction. You know, this is something where, keeping in mind our affordable housing plan and the location analysis that we did for Route 1, and also some of the exciting sort of advancements in septic systems and our ability to do higher density. This is something that I would like to look into. This particular zone does have this maximum density of 6 units per acre, and that would be done via special permit. And again, the age restriction has been lifted.
I think that, you know, I'll chirp in. I think the original concern on the age restriction was based on populating kids into the school system. And, you know, as Matt can attest, like our school population is declining. So I don't really think that that's a real concern right now. Right, Matt?
Yeah, Phil, I would agree with you. All the projections, although we are exceeding the declining projections.
That's great.
Based largely on the strength of our school district. However, we are, the declining population is going to be a reality. And at one point, you're absolutely right. There was a thinking in this community that in order to preserve the cost of providing education, we wanted to do the 55 and older. And I think there are at least 2 projects that were originally approved, or parcels that were originally approved for age restricted that have since been reversed. You might know that better than me, Phil.
So yeah, to that point, I believe the project across the street from the Guilford, we used to call the rock pile, the Guilford Commons.
It's a rock pile.
Oh, the quarry.
Yeah.
Was approved, I think, for 155 units, give or take, but it was all supposed to be originally senior restricted, and that
Right.
was eliminated based primarily on the fact that there just wasn't as much demand for that.
Right.
And there wasn't a concern that it would overtax the public school system.
Right.
So,
Agreed.
I
Well,
also
I-
think the,
Jamie can probably talk to the number of potential developments that are going on, that are on the drawing board right now, which could potentially alter the theory you just proposed, Phil, that
Yeah.
we're not going to increase the school population, but there are how many, Jamie? About 300 units proposed currently that are coming through our
Yes.
land use organizations?
yes, close to, yeah. I mean, the State Street multifamily development that recently went through, I mean, they did, I guess maybe 2 years ago now, they came before the commission to remove the age restriction on that, I believe.
I recall that.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you for that feedback and those comments. Back to, again, this little inclusion of farm-related buildings. Perhaps this is relevant for these parcels within town. Lodging and conference centers are now via special permit, no longer site plan. Manufacturing is a permitted use via special permit. Printing establishments, special permit. Places of worship, special permit. Offices, businesses and professional stays the same. This one, let me just read here so I don't get this wrong. Studios for dance, music, and theatrical instruction are via site plan. Physical fitness establishments are via special permit. Interesting, an indoor-outdoor recreation facility inclusion. This is a new inclusion permitted via special permit in the business mixed use zone. No restaurants ever in that zone, and none anymore, which leads me to believe that I've done this in error here.
Why wouldn't we allow a restaurant?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm wondering now. Let's check my work here. Did I miss this entirely, or is this an actual
Yeah.
thing?
We allow a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
And a restaurant generally is servicing the industrial and or residential use of that area. So why would we exclude that? That seems
They have been excluded. I am reading my draft regs right now. If anybody, it has been a long couple of days. If anybody is a reference to restaurants, let me know, but I do not believe they're in here. So perhaps this is a question for Glenn.
right.
Or perhaps maybe this goes back to the kind of Route 1 West planning studies that were done in the past.
There's a lot
As
of,
you-
there's a
as you-
reasonable number of Route 1 West restaurants.
Well, so Jamie, you can just jump to the first table you showed, which was the existing, and you can see that these three districts are the only ones that don't allow restaurants. My guess is that we did the first one, and then the second one and the third one just copied the first one.
Okay,
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah. Scott,
But
that's
you-
probably a good call. I think I was looking at it and I said, did somebody try to protect a Little League snack stand?
Right,
and-
exactly.
Right.
Or like if in fact there was, I think one of the proposals I saw was kind of a sports type facility on the far east end.
That's the reason for this new inclusion that she just mentioned. 'Cause
yeah, this guy here.
Right.
Yep.
But like if you couldn't have
there was a restaurant as part of that proposal.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It seems silly to me that like if you're gonna have a ton of people there for the whole day at a soccer tournament, to not have an availability to help them and service them. And I'm not
And-
talking about Chick-fil-A.
And also makes some money. That's a BC2 complex. I think that came before us, right?
Correct.
Great, thank you. Thank you for both doing a little fact checking for me, as well as providing some great comments. Again, the accessory solar and wind. It looks like, again, this is kind of a common theme here that the schools, colleges and universities, and I believe this one, daycares as well, are a special permit. The artist studios, which were not in MUC1 and MUC2, but were in MUC3, are now in the business mixed use as site plan. Museums, special permit. That covers it, Phil. So there is this new inclusion. There was the omission of restaurants, which we will, take a look at and give some careful consideration to as kind of a supporting service for future development there. And I believe everything else is fairly similar. Again, the age restricted. Great. State Street North. Let me get there and then we'll go back to the zoning map. So any questions or thoughts as we get to these last couple of zones here? Okay, great. I like this rhythm we have. We're going back to our map now. Here's the proposed map. I'll take you to the existing map just so we can orient ourselves. We're now going to talk about the mixed use open space zone, which is right here. I believe we only have one area of town that we referred to now as the mixed use. I believe it's open space. It will become the State Street North zone.
Is there any way to include that within other districts as opposed to create a special district for it?
Let's have a look. I mean, I think since it seems to be enveloped by, for lack of a better term here, the industrial zone.
The tree farm.
Yeah, so perhaps this was a move to allow for housing. Let's take a look at that use table and,
Yeah.
and
Didn't we approve a housing project in this?
Yeah, we did. We did.
We totally
approved
did.
one there. Yeah.
So
I'm
it
just curious,
wouldn't make
like,
sense it wouldn't make sense to turn it into industrial.
well, is the housing allowed in industrial?
No,
No.
that's a
Okay,
change
so
that
that's
they're
the
making.
problem. All right,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yep, no, not a problem. Good question. Thank you, Phil. There was an interesting thing here. I don't know if anyone from the Safe Streets Task Force is on with us this evening, but if you read the fine print in this particular section of the regs, there is an accommodation specifically for the development that we were just talking about, where, if you remember, we asked the developers to create a space for a potential future road that was part of our transportation plan and would be connecting to Route 1.
Yeah.
So this specific, I mean, this is the point that I alluded to earlier about how there are really specific things that you can tell, perhaps when these were written, there was a certain application before the board. However, I do think that this kind of unique reference to or standard for roads, sidewalks, and path planning is an interesting one. I've asked the Safe Streets Task Force to have a look at it, and they did get back to me with a few great recommendations. And this really gets to the core of any commercial or multifamily residential development would have the inclusion or make provisions for sidewalks. Those of you on the commission, know that this is something that we went back and forth with Hubbard Road over. It's something that, we sort of seem to get to a moment with the development team. And sometimes there's pushback, and other times, like the very recent 48 unit at 2222 Boston Post Road, right from the very beginning, they agreed to do 600 linear feet of sidewalk. So, I think we would be wise to have some standards, and the actual regs, the new proposed regs, we won't be talking about them tonight, but we do have section 7, which is all about standards. That's where you'll find our parking and loading, our landscaping and screening, exterior lighting, stormwater management, erosion control, and sidewalks and accessibility. So, I'll be working with the Safe Streets folks to make sure that we got those standards right. Okay, let's go here. Dwelling units again. The age restriction of 55 and older has been removed here. I can't remember if this was, something that we actually did as a commission for this site, but anyways, it's not in the new regs. And the density per acre is listed at 6, but also in the past, there was no maximum density in this particular zone, just the age restriction. Let's see. Interestingly,
Jamie, quick question. So regarding, are we eliminating the access road wordage?
No, we're not. We're keeping it. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear on that. I think that the language specifically talks about and references our transportation plan. So I think that is a good thing to perhaps include in all of our districts. That if there is a town sort of effort or planning process to create more pedestrian or bicycle or, road access, whatever it might be, to give the development world a heads up that within our zoning regulations, this is something that we prioritize. So the idea is that not only do we have those types of provisions in our standards section, but we have it in each zone as it is listed in this particular zone right now.
So I guess my concern on the project that we approved just south of 95 was a potential abutting property, and then a requirement to then connect to Route 1 on an accessory access road.
I believe they just left, didn't they just leave
They left a spot. Yeah,
they left a spot for where a road could go in future, if I remember correctly.
Okay. I mean, I just want to bring it up.
They granted an easement for the road.
I doubt Mr. Pinchbeck granted an easement for the road, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
just within the development.
Yeah, I mean, you're raising the difficulty here with this one, Phil. I'm just, I feel like that was a challenging suggestion to the development team because, the transportation plan is rather dated, but we do have now the Safe Streets Task Force's report and final plan will become part of our plan of conservation and development, or essentially our transportation plan. And so, it's in keeping to reference that plan in any future commercial multifamily development.
With respect to this particular development, have approvals actually been given? And if so, were they conditioned upon the fact that the developer needed to negotiate with the Pinchbecks to get access to Route 1 from that property?
it was approved and it was not conditional,
That's kind of what I thought. So.
to the best of my knowledge. Sorry, I always say that. Scott, help me out. Pull me
Yeah,
off
correct.
pull me off the anchor.
They made a provision, I believe that they had a provision in there for future, if in some distant future that became a reality, but that's it.
Okay.
There was no requirement.
That was my recollection. I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on, I just want to be mindful of everyone's evening. I promise not to keep you past 9:30, and I know that there are many PRB 1, 2, 3, and 4 people who want to have a discussion tonight. So moving quickly through this, I don't really think there are any other things here. This was an interesting one. The restaurants, when accessory to a permitted use with some restrictions, they have to be kind of like within an existing building. I forget the specific language, but I found that to be a little bit different from other zones. So again, if you have an interest in this zone and a potential restaurant, there was something in there that I can't quite remember right now. But I believe it had something to do with the restaurant had to occupy an existing establishment. I'll make a note here to get a little bit more clarity on that. Okay. Accessory solar again, yes, and here it was again for retail stores. No, it's worth just going back in and checking it because so if you go into the State Street North regulations, there is
Jamie, wouldn't that relate to the new thing you added to every one of these districts at the top? Wouldn't that be similar?
You know, I just found it interesting that they pulled it out. So in the accessory use and structures section for State Street North District, which is 4.6.c, under accessory uses, they do actually list retail stores when accessory to a permitted use and located in the same building as a permitted use, not to exceed 10% of the floor area of the primary permitted use. So I think the specific thing here is that if you have a restaurant that meets those restrictions, it can be approved via an administrative level permit. But I think that restaurants are actually, let me just look at the.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, sorry, folks. Just getting, it's also interesting to me that in this zone, almost everything is via special permit. If anybody has looked into this a little bit. Yeah, and there doesn't seem to be restaurants on their own as a permitted use. It seems that they're only meant to be accessory uses. And it's the same thing for retail stores. So perhaps this is a question for Glenn as to what was the origin of this particular nuance.
Jamie, Keith Bishop here.
Hi, Keith.
Is this potentially like an Evergreen Woods facility where then they've
yeah.
all store for the residents only for their convenience because they can't, get out and walk around and they want a coffee shop or they want a small hairdresser or whatever?
Yeah, it seems that's exactly what it is because there is a restriction on the amount of square footage not to exceed for either a restaurant or a retail store 10% of the floor area of the permitted use.
So it sounds
except
like self-contained, residential community,
right,
where people can't get out. The other thing I just could include tonight, I know it's not on any of the scheduled meetings, section 5.8, which is the overlay zone section.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for the people that are on here, that is an important understanding for this group here that's at this meeting to at least get the quick overview and expose it to others as well.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. So, with that thought in mind, the residential districts themselves, we don't have an information session for. We are doing 2 housing related meetings, one at the end of September and then one in October. And I'll be updating our schedule to reflect that. But that's where we have the incentive housing development and special housing developments, which are really kind of the key tools for implementing our affordable housing plan. So, Keith is raising some great points here. I mean, we do not as of yet have scheduled discussions for the residential districts. Similarly, we have some special districts, which include these overlay districts. One of them happens to be the planned development district, which I know has come up quite a bit with the commission, and we're not discussing that. So if any of you have a real burning desire to have those discussions in a public open forum, I'm happy to schedule them. And so, Keith, I'm not sure if that gets to what you're interested in. Perhaps I can also, on the website, segment out some of those sections so that people can find them more easily. And again, I do offer the opportunity to discuss any of the parts of the regs that that we haven't had a focused session on.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be good to highlight that as you did in, our case and what we came before you in the past couple months
Great.
for our zoning request. And
Okay.
for not changing any lines here, and there's some definite places that line changes could be considered here. And I'm sure the commission members, look at that and understand that potential, and it's not the right time or place to include that here. But that's the mechanism to be able to help, move that stuff along.
Great.
By proposal.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I do feel as though the planned development district would be a good item to consult with power users on. I mean, I know that can be a little bit controversial, but I would love to have input from folks who have practice in other towns of steering these types of master planning processes through and learn from what they've learned. So perhaps it will be a focus of that particular session. Okay, I believe we can now move on from the State Street North District. Let's try to, try to accelerate a little bit. Going back to the zoning map, let's have a look. We're about to venture into the PRBs. Okay, so here we are. Okay, great. So again, this is the proposed map. I can take you to the existing if that feels a little bit more comfortable. What we're about to discuss is a merger of the TS zone, the PV zone, not a merger, it's actually, let's call it a reorganization. But basically the majority of the zones along Route 1, okay? So if we look at our zones, and at play here are the TS zone, the TS2 zone, the TS3 zone, as well as the PV zone will become what we call the Post Road Business 1. The PV2 will become the Post Road Business 2. There is a Post Road Business 3 and a Post Road Business 4 proposed. So maybe this is a little bit better way to look at them. So again, the TS becomes the PRB3. The PV becomes PRB1. PV2 becomes PRB2. I believe this is PV3. I myself am getting confused now. So no, sorry, TS2, PRB3. And then this particular part, if I flash back to the existing zones, it's kind of a hodgepodge of TS3 and one of these commercial district parcels. Okay, so if there aren't any questions about the specific geographic area, let's dive into the use tables. Okay, we will start with, did someone have a raised hand? I'm sorry if I missed it.
Yep, Tony, go ahead.
I have a question regarding, you just had the West End map. You were discussing the various zones at that end of town. I'm not familiar specifically with what you were calling the overlay zone, which is the green and white striped area.
Okay, let me, yep, sure.
Pull that map up again.
Pull up the map, yep.
So my question has to do with what that is.
This part right here?
Right there, yep.
That's the Gateway Overlay District.
I know what you're calling it, but what is it?
Yeah, no, I don't know off the top of my head, so let me just. It is a special district, as Mr. Bishop was referring to earlier. It is contained within section 5 of the new regulations.
I believe the existing as well, isn't it?
Yeah. it's
Existing is
existing.
TS2. I'm part of that.
Jamie, just only
yeah.
because I've been around this for 100 years. Is that what was commonly referred to as the West End Development Overlay Zone?
Well, sort of.
Tony, you've been here
As
as
you
long
know,
as
Matt, I was chairman of that committee for about half of its progress. And when we hit the wall because of the propane situation that came up in the middle of all of that, I walked away from it. But I am, in fact, included in that red and white striped area, property that I own. And I'd like to know what it is, because it was TS2. And now you have it designated something that I don't understand.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing, you mean right here, there's a little ship. So this is the existing map. Let me zoom in.
It's the
Okay.
only green and white striped zone that you're showing on any part of town.
Yep. So I don't see those lot lines changing, but help
It's
me
not changing.
understand.
Oh, you don't see the colors, the striping? Okay.
The Gateway
Yeah.
Overlay District is not changing. It's the same as it was. That I'm sure it's in the regs somewhere, Jamie, that you can locate.
Yeah, it's in,
Send Tony the Gateway Overlay District.
It is.
it's in section 5.3.
Right.
I don't see any revisions, additions, changes, notes. I think they probably took what was existing. Tony, I'm happy to share this section with you. It sounds like you have a lot of history on the development of this, and maybe there's an opportunity here that we missed.
Well, unless I'm wrong, to the best of my knowledge, that area was TS2.
Okay, so let's have a look. I mean, again, it is possible that there was,
You're
something
showing a
in the-
TS2 to the east of that.
Right, it is, but I don't believe that this line is changing. That's what I'm trying to get some clarity on. This was TS2, is now PRB3, but it looks like the
Well,
gateway.
I can't speak for that. I don't believe that was TS2, the lighter green, solid green. The
see.
striped red and white green was TS2.
Wow. I'm going to go back to my original statement. And again, I'm not a zoning expert, but I remember the term West End Overlay Zone. That was a significant piece of discussion back in the 90s. And I thought there was something that codified that. I may be completely wrong, because I'm wrong very often, but the fact that that is a zone that doesn't have any definition on it on this map might be a bit concerning.
Well, it is a commercial zone. It should be easily defined somewhere in the regs. But that's the question I have that we can talk about at another time. I don't want to take up your time this evening.
Great. Okay, thank you for raising it, Tony, and I'm going to make a little note here to get back to that.
And I have a general observation of what I've heard. This is my first time participating in your Zoom meetings that you're having on a regular basis. My general observation or general conclusion is that the proposals are more restrictive than what is currently now. I think anybody looking at this objectively and looking at the fact that some areas had special permit now have, were permitted before, now have special permits, or previously had no site plan requirement, now require site plans. All of that adds to the difficulty of taking anything and changing it. And it adds expense, it adds time in the process, and time is money. And at the end of the day, if the Economic Development Commission is truly looking at economic development, they have to look at the fine nuances of these little changes that can at some point individually impact economic development due to the fact that time and money are involved in doing the changes that you're proposing. Just a general observation. And I've been doing business in town for a long time. I can tell you the town of Guilford does not perceived on the outside as the great town that we perceive it to be on the inside. And part of that has to do with the regulations and the fact that Guilford is a difficult town to do business in. Okay, that's a general perception of what goes on. Some of these
Okay.
little things are part of that.
Thank
But
you.
more importantly, I'm interested in the red and white, the green and white striped area and what that actually is.
Sure. I will reach out to you, Tony, with some follow-up and a question to Glenn. Jamie, hi, welcome. So you want to ask a question?
I'm going to politely disagree in the sense that we have shopping center 1. I'm responsible for Shoreline Plaza, and I'm also a resident in town. So I had a big conversation with Jamie. Half of what is so amazing about our town is because of these people who made these regulations that are so, they're really hard to follow. There's 300 pages. It's absolutely crazy. In speaking with Jamie, I was giving her several instances where I'm confused on the zoning regulations of being able to, whether or not I can accept someone as a tenant or not because of the regulations. All those regulations are what made Guilford what Guilford is, and why Guilford isn't Brantford, and why Guilford isn't
Madison.
And so I'm gonna say, number 1, it's so silly for us to have all these regulations because it makes it impossible to follow. Number 2, it's amazing that all these people took the time to make the regulations to make it an amazing town. So we have to be able to keep the regulations that keep Guilford what Guilford is, while still being able to be open enough to have it easily digestible to the consumer. That's the end of what I want to say.
I'll just comment that I believe the regulations are very easy to understand. If you've dealt with them, they're complicated, no question, they are complicated. But once you understand what you're dealing with and you get definitions and you get clear explanations of the situation at hand, they're very easy to understand. They're very easy to work with. So I don't think it's a question of the complexity of the regulations. They are what they are, and they read in black and white. What I'm suggesting is that every time you change one and make it a little bit more restrictive, it creates a change that becomes very difficult for economic development, which we supposedly are looking towards as a town. And I don't see that, to me, that's very obvious because I see what's happening and I see what has happened over the years. I live in town, I own property in town, I developed in town, but the regulations are what they are. And in fact, the Planning and Zoning Commission and the planning committees that very, very helpful. The meetings that they have prior to any project that comes before them is very, very helpful to bring that project forward or not, because the developer knows what he has to do and what's necessary to get from point A to point B. So I'm not being condescending or in any way saying anything that's not positive about the town. I love the town. Been here for 45 years. Okay, so I understand what the town is. I do understand that when you take something in the regulation that is currently permitted and you move it to special permit or you move it to special permit with site plan, it makes the process more expensive, both in time and professional services necessary to get to that point. So that's something that needs to be factored into any decision that you make on this. That's just a general observation. As I said, I have not been part of this in the past, so you probably have covered that to some extent.
No, I actually think your comment is very timely. It is something that I did reference earlier, and Miss Shansky gave us her response at that time. And now you are sharing with us also your sense. And you're right, Mr. Fabiano. I mean, there are instances where, particularly with dwelling units, where we allowed these as site plan applications, and they are now special permit applications. And so, you know, duly noted what you are saying. You know, my door is always open, as are other folks at Town Hall South, and I think we have a real willingness to work with the economic development officer and the commission to try to get at something that I believe Ms. Lynch is asking for, which is something that's, you know, fairly easy to navigate, but also kind of holds true to Guilford. So
I thank you for your time, and I thank you for what you're doing going forward. I think it's a great thing, and it does bring better understanding to every little aspect in the zoning regulation, which are very complex, no question.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you.
I would just add that,
I know you want to comment on this.
that the special permit, as a general statement, most of the time we allow, but it's, and I know it's an expense, but it's a level of protection for the community that we all, you know, live in and love and want to keep from becoming, you know, overly industrialized. In my opinion, it's just our Route 1 infrastructure does not allow currently for massive development. So I think, you know, so for example, we ask for traffic studies, and I know that's a pain in the butt for some stuff, and there are restrictions on drive-throughs, and I think all of those things are well thought through in the past, and we're just following through on what those prior commissioners have enacted. And I to the most part, I think we've been pretty open to reasonable changes to that. So I just wanted to.
I agree, Philip. Thank you. And Jane, just for your information, I was on the committee, the last Table 5 committee that brought what you see in front of you now. And that was, I think, about 8 or 9 years ago. And this all was discussed and rehashed, and changes were implemented.
Oh, is that just my internet, or have we lost Tony?
I think we lost Tony.
Okay.
I've had that blue screen thing.
Jamie, since it's almost 9:30, could we get through this?
I'm sorry, Mr. Resnikoff. Yes, thank you. Okay, so we're moving through what is now the proposed Post Road Business 1 district, which is the existing PV zone. This is the zone, Mr. Resnikoff, that your property is in. This is also the zone that kind of overlaps or crosses over our historic district, is adjacent to the historic district. The site plan for basically all of the uses except for dwelling units. And again, there is this density factor here. This is particularly also the zone at which I did receive a phone call from a mixed-use property owner to reconsider our density limitations in this zone. Again, with the interest of bringing more sort of dwelling units and a diversity of dwelling units in and around the green and the green area. The lodging centers via site plan, entertainment, including movies and theaters and playhouses via special permit. None of the marine uses, offices, personal service establishments, all the same with site plan. Places of worship, special permit. Recreational facilities, gymnasiums, physical fitness, site plan. Restaurants, excluding drive-throughs, are via special permit, not site plan. And again, we do have the staff level zoning permit and special permit. The accessory uses of solar and wind, retail stores with the exclusion of the storage of lumber and building materials. Again, the daycares as site plan and others as special permit. So not a whole lot of extensive changes here. Now, Mr. Resnikoff, this is the zone of which you own property. I think you would like to engage in a discussion about these uses.
The only thing I'd like to ask the commission to consider, which I've asked 3 times previously, is to allow food pickup and drive-ups in this zone. There's food pickup to the east, there's food pickup to the west. It is almost impossible to get a tenant to take a property today for food use without a drive-up, mostly because of what's happened with COVID. And there are 2 forms of drive-up. There's food ordering and there's curbside delivery. I would certainly ask the commission to consider, since we have food in this zone already, the place is there, which is food, and in essence has food pickup and drive up now, even though it doesn't look like one. And we previously have had a Starbucks there who would have stayed there if we could have had a drive up there. There are drive ups to the east at McDonald's, at Wendy's, at Dunkin' Donuts. And I think it's only appropriate. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It's the only site left on Route 1 at a 4-way interchange with a signalized intersection. It's opposite a major shopping center. There's commercial all around it. There's nothing special about it in terms of anything else. I just asked the commission to look at the reality of today's world, particularly given the pandemic we've just gone through and that we could go through again.
Thank you, Mr. Resnikoff. Jamie, you have your hand raised?
Unmute me, sorry. We're right across this, we're right across the street, and I'm just gonna say that I'm in agreement with, that should have a drive-through.
Okay.
That would have been awesome if that Starbucks was able to keep being there and have that drive-through. And I would agree. It's impossible for them to get anything to go in there without a drive-through.
Thank you both.
I'm gonna leave.
Okay, thanks, Jamie.
I'm sorry, I have to do kid stuff.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay.
Is there concern with traffic getting backed up? Like I just think of the Dunkin' Donuts sometimes at prime time, there's Route 1 is backed up. Is that a concern with that site?
If I could address that, that's what makes this site unique, is that it has a signal. Actually, there's room on site for queuing. There's room for queuing both on Route 1, and when we built it, the state of Connecticut forced us to build the left turn lane that exists on Route 1. So this site already has queuing space on it. And it's controlled by a light, unlike all the other drive-ups in town.
Jamie, if I could just suggest, you could note it down as a noted, a note brought up, and we can discuss it when we come to it towards the end of all this public discourse.
Yes, thank you, Scott.
And I think if Mr. Resnikoff has specific things he wants to discuss, then I think you and your staff be able to help him out as much as you can as well. Right?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so we'll continue here, moving forward. And so I think perhaps it's best to go to the map again. These zones are fairly similar. It's just where they are.
Jamie, I'm just going to excuse myself and thank you everybody for your attention.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you, Mr. Resnikoff. I will follow up with you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so we are now at the Post Road Business District 2. So again, I'll try to pull up this map for you. There they are. Any clarifying questions as we move through this? So again, this is our existing zoning map. The area that we were just discussing is the PV here. The area that we're about to move on to, we currently refer to as PV2. And on the proposed map, the area we were just discussing becomes PRB1, and the area we're about to discuss becomes PRB2. Okay. If there are no questions there, I'll move on to the use table. The commissioners will remember, and maybe some others remember, that this is a zone in which the use table was successfully amended to include drive-through restaurants permitted via special permit. So that is reflected here in these uses. Fairly similar across the board. Again, the dwelling units are, the density is kept at the same, but to create dwelling units requires a special permit. Entertainment facilities, lodging facilities, all the same here. I don't think in the past motor vehicle washing establishments were allowed in this zone, but they are in the new regs allowed via special permit. I'm trying to think about the uses within this zone, and this might have been to bring an existing use into compliance. If anybody has further thoughts on that. Okay.
You could just check with Glenn, I'm sure.
Yeah, yep. And so here again is that notation that restaurants, including drive-through service, is permitted via special permit. Essentially, the zone is fairly much the same. However, we do have this call out that schools, colleges, or universities are now via special permit, not site plan. Artists and studio galleries, garden supply stores, museums, funeral homes. So fairly much the same with the new change for the drive-throughs. Okay, great. Moving on, if there are no questions, we'll move on to PRB3. Okay, so again, I'll go to the map, help us understand what we're looking at here. Any questions? A good time to ask right now. PRB3, so let me just kind of zoom out a little bit. Interestingly, this one will now encompass I believe the TS zone as well as the TS2 zone. So if we go to the existing map, you'll see here at the eastern end of town along Route 1, the TS zone. I believe that's referred to as the Transitional and Service District. And then moving on to, I believe this new zone will encompass the, oh, I'm sorry, did I not reference that the PRB2, this particular lot across from shopping center, no, wait, is that right? Oh, I'm sorry, no. The C4W becomes PRB2. That's right.
Just switch to the new plan.
It's getting confused in my own mapping. So we're talking about now the far east of Route 1, as well as kind of pretty far west and all the way west, the PRB3. Okay. And we'll move to the use table. Okay, the PRB3, again, there is, just wanted to call out this dwelling units are now via special permit, and the density is a reduction from the TS zone, which is 8 units. I think this is something that we should give some consideration to,
I think at this point, it's safe to assume that they were just trying to get it to be consistent across all districts.
Yeah.
Whether That's correct. I guess it's up for debate if people want to, put in their 2 cents. It sounds like some people already have, so we could consider.
Yes, we have, particularly the areas around the green, so closer to the green. Okay, no real big changes here. Forgive me, I'm trying to just move along. This was a surprise to me. I mean, perhaps a use which we want to be more restrictive on than others is a site plan, not changed to a special permit. I haven't received any feedback on that, but it was something that I did notice. Okay, site plan, special permit. Really, no real changes here. However, the sale, repair, and servicing of boats, sails, marine equipment, and engines is now via special permit, site plan. In the PRB3, this is all fairly the same. Motor vehicle, washing establishment, offices, personal service establishment, places of worship, research laboratories, gyms, recreational facilities, restaurants, food establishments. This is via site plan. This was an interesting one where we have perhaps a new way of talking about retail propane filling station as an accessory use, excluding bulk storage. So this was allowed via site plan before and is now a special permit for an accessory use. Okay. Again, the daycares are split off from schools and universities, one being site plan, the other special permit. All fairly standard. No real big changes here. Okay, just a consolidation of zones. All right, thank you. Last but not least, PRB4. Okay, going through the map. This is the second to last zone. We're in the home stretch. Thank you for sticking it out with me. Any further clarifying questions, please let me know. The PRB4. So this is a small section along Route 1. If we go to the existing, I believe Mr. Fapiano was asking about the Gateway Overlay District. This is on the other side of Route 1. There are 2 TS3 kind of zoned areas. And then I believe this is one larger parcel that is a CD parcel. So the PRB4 will be just in that area. Okay. And we'll go to the use table. I'm sorry, was that a question or no? Okay, so again, this is a merger of the TS3 zones, a portion of the TS3 zones, and this one sort of commercial district. There are some unique restrictions on the square footage of buildings. I think that this perhaps, I don't know if Mr. Fapiano is still on the line, but this perhaps was part of the Route 1 West planning exercises. Their clinics, medical and dental are permitted via site plan, but the new regs specify any new building not to exceed 10,000 square feet, and that is unique. We don't have that type of restriction in any of the other new zones. A similar thing is on any new urgent care building is not to exceed 10,000 square feet and is done via site plan.
It's interesting to me that all other places you have hospitals and nursing facilities as special permit, but not on this one.
Right, yeah, I don't, but the restriction is on the size.
Right.
And I think,
So we might want to think about that.
yeah.
I agree. I think we need to think about this, especially this idea, this 10,000 square feet stuff. I mean, isn't this the only place in town where we have that kind of a restriction?
She's right. It might be because of that plan that was put into place. So we can just look into the history of it.
Well, that, I remember the discussion of the plan, but it doesn't mean that we can't think about it again.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, great, thank you. Dwelling units, same type of thing. Again, any new financial institutions do have the size restriction. There was also a size restriction. I gotta believe that this comes from a past planning process, because this actually calls out that any lodging or conference center would not exceed more than 15 rooms. So again, maybe we'll ask Glenn for some context.
Well, we need to rethink that.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. These people don't.
Okay. The motor vehicle refueling stations were permitted. I do not believe this renders anything non-conforming, but I did notice that the refueling stations were permitted in the, what is this? This particular commercial district parcel no longer will be permitted there. The motor vehicle washing establishment, same thing, no longer permitted. Offices, business professional site plan, but again, there's restriction on 10,000 square feet. Personal service establishments, a restriction of 5,000 square feet. I have a feeling that in the past, this was part of a planning process that involved these restrictions. So happy to go back and kind of look and see what that was. The heating, fuel, and bulk storage no longer permitted. I believe heating oil was permitted via site plan in this CD parcel. Gyms, recreational facilities as site plan, restaurants as site plan. No drive-through service here. Retail propane filling, again, retail propane filling stations as an accessory use. The retail sales or storage of lumber and bulk building materials was permitted in this, in I believe the TS3, but is no longer permitted in the PRB4. Okay. Again, size restrictions here. So I think this is overwhelmingly need to look into a little bit, get more clarity and more detail on these size restrictions and reevaluate, you know, if that was something that was a planning process from however long ago, is that again something that we'd like to hold on to or reconsider. Okay, last but not least, we have arrived at the shopping center district. So let's go back to the map here. Here we are. So shopping center, we are currently looking at the proposed zoning map. We have referred to several times this evening the rock pile, so otherwise known as Guilford Commons. That is the shopping that will become the shopping center district. I believe it's currently Shopping Center West, and the existing shopping center district, which is mostly is comprised of Shoreline Plaza. There is one significant change here that happens as a result of the merger of those two. Have you all come with me to the use table? Yeah, this, no? Okay, I have to redo that. Okay. Okay, so again, a merger of the existing shopping center and existing shopping center West will now become the shopping center district. A lot of the things that we talked about this evening are there, the change in use. Everything that was site plan is mostly continues to be site plan, with the exception of self-storage facilities are now via special permit. Dwelling units at a density of 6 units per acre are now special permit rather than site plan. Oops, sorry, forgive me. Lodging and conference space, site plan, special permit for entertainment facilities and manufacturing. Businesses, personal service establishments, places of worship, this is all maintained. Research laboratories has been maintained. Again, here we have this kind of inclusion of recreational facilities, other gyms not to exceed a certain square footage, but done via site plan. Restaurant, including drive-through service. This is a carryover from the shopping center, the current existing shopping center west zone, where the rock pile is, where Panera Bread is. There is the allowance for restaurant drive-through service there via special permit as an accessory use to a permitted structure. And with this zone change, that will carry over to the Shoreline Plaza. Okay. Again, I think I missed the wind energy part.
Sorry, Jamie, you should just mark that for discussion with the zoning commission in general, please.
Yep, okay. All right, thank you. Sorry, I'm losing my focus here. We have, I think, merged retail sales and stores. That's combined. I think, yep. So again, the private schools, colleges, and universities have moved to special permit rather than site plan. Dog care facilities, which I think the new regs refer to pet grooming and daycare facilities for animals, are via special permit. And that's it. Okay, we have made it through all of the business districts. Well, we're only about 18 minutes over the scheduled time, but you know, thank you for sticking it out with me and having this conversation. These, you know, as the schedule to adoption shows, there's still time, plenty of time to come back and digest all this information and share with us any, you know, suggestions, feedback, comments that you may have. I've got some of my marching orders about things that need to be given some, you know, more consideration and thought. With that, I'll entertain any last questions and comments.
Jamie, thank you very much for guiding us through all of this. Clearly, the path you have established in terms of communication with the entire community, as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission over the last several months, is absolutely astounding. And I want to thank you for the work you're putting in and the transparency that you are giving to this community. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Matt.
Jamie, Keith Bishop here. Yeah, kudos as well for what Matt just said. Also, in terms of the timeline, and when will the legal language changes be forthcoming that will be more than adequate to rehash by those of us on these meetings before you get to a 30-day notice and then wanting to have reconsideration by others who may wish to further influence.
Yeah,
what
yeah.
been put together, and I'm not suggesting I'm going to come through with any legal.
Yeah. What are you offering, Keith?
But most certainly, you take the notes in here, the commission's going to digest them. And we well know that when it comes to the public hearing process, it's very difficult to start wordsmithing things at that point for the last end.
Yeah,
So-
no, Keith, so thank you for that. I mean, what I have done with the one meeting that we did have in July, the farms and farming regulations, I actually, took that snippet of the regs, I redlined our conversation, and I saved that revised section in the materials folder. And so, that one was kind of nice and neatly packaged. I know we didn't resolve everything in it, but this one's a little bit more, hairy and has lots of tentacles. So we gotta wrangle it a little bit, but I will try to do the same thing where I, put into the note bars, the notes section that this still needs to be looked at or resolved, but we'll go ahead and make some of the red line changes. That's really all that I've kind of come up with thus far. I'd love some feedback as to how that might work better. I don't really have a good strategy for other than making the revisions a few days after these meetings and then putting those back out there for consumption.
If the consultant's budget, I know, has been pretty well spent. Is there going to be more dollars requested in order to have the consultant be doing part of that legal changing, and how will that process? And I don't need an answer now, but I'm just sort of.
Yeah, no, it's a great, we have to consider it.
Keith, I'll give you the answer to that. We'll do whatever we need to do relative to making sure this process goes the way it should go, and that the community is satisfied with the outcome relative to the rewrite and the adoption of the new zoning code.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Continue to work with that. And for those of you that have continued to hang out, you get the inside scoop. On September 8th, we're interviewing candidates for our new assistant town planner / zoning enforcement officer. Woo! So, there'll be another person to help do these outreach efforts and communicate and make the changes. And, one last point I'll say about that is that I have found that, the commissions, all the various committees and commissions that we have are really a great place to kind of, drive home, have that real hard look at any suggested edits or changes. So I guess the answer there, Keith, is that we're going to keep, it's an iterative process. I will, we'll do our best to put out the revisions so that people can go back and make comments, and open to any other way to do it. Great. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We'll see you in September. Thanks for your time. Take care.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thanks. Good night.